Hi there guys, welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host Simon Conboy. Continuing on with my franchise reviews from the year 2007 to 2016. This episode will be focusing on the New York Football Giants. So for this series what I'm doing is I'm taking the last 10 years of records during the regular season, piling that up, making a 10-year record for them, going over the head coaching changes, pointing out playoff appearances, that kind of thing, for a very basic overview of how the team has performed on the field, and then going through the last 10 years worth of draft classes to, at the end of the week in the Friday recap, going to really break down those stats, see what kind of information we can gather as to whether drafting is integral to overall team success. I'll explain that grading system once I get to that part of the video, but first we'll go over the Giants' record. So in the last 10 years, the Giants have won 88 games and lost 72. 2 Super Bowl wins in only 4 playoff appearances, with just the 1 division title. That might be 2, I can't entirely remember. Someone correct me if I am wrong on the 1. Of course, great success with those 2 playoff wins. They haven't made the playoffs much, but when they have, they've been efficient. I think this team could be summed up as Eli Manning in a nutshell. He's wildly inconsistent. It can be great one week and terrible the next. That's this team through and through. It's maddeningly inconsistent over the past decade. So you can see a lot of middling records. 9-7, they've done that a couple of times. 7-9, 2 6-10s, a few 10-6s, a little bit of everything. Just again inconsistent as all heck, these Giants. So moving on, and on top of that, Tom Coughlin was of course the coach up until last season. Ben McAdoo taking over that role. So a lot of continuity there. Of course, Eli being the quarterback for this entire time frame. Considering, as I say, his inconsistency I think reflects in that team's record. Some years he looks like an all-pro or a pro bowler. Other times he looks like a below-average starter. Last year I thought he was very poor. So onto the draft. So the way I'm grading this, I'm going through rounds 1 through 3, grading each individual player. If they're solid, they will add a +1 to that team's overall score. If they were mediocre, middling, fine, it won't affect the score at all. If they're a bust, it will be a -1. Being a bit more strict with first rounders, of course I expect more from a top 10 pick than someone picked 30th overall, for example. And then with players picked in rounds 4 through 7, just highlighting players who've had an impact in this league and giving the team a score of +1 for them as a value pick, due to so many of those players not making it in this league. So, as you'll see, this team has been really cursed with their first rounders. Starting with the 07 class, Aaron Ross, the cornerback who was selected 20th overall. He was a pretty good corner when he was healthy. Had his career cut short, had a lot of injuries, but I can't quite give it a side just because difficult. But yeah, he'll fall into the mediocre line. Unfortunate, could easily have been a solid. I thought he was quite a good player. In the second round, the other Steve Smith got some reasonable years out of him. Not great for a second rounder. Probably not quite enough to be a bust though. So he's again falling into that middle category. No effect on the score. In the third, Jay Alford, defensive tackle. He did very little with his career. He was a bust. And in the 7th, Ahmad Bradshaw, the running back, he was integral to that team's offense, formed a very good duo back in the day with Brandon Jacobs. Trying to just remember the name there. He was, good value pick, great pick in the 7th. Moving on to 2008, continuing the first round injury theme, Kenny Phillips, the safety, had a couple of really good years. Then, unfortunately, had to retire earlier than he likely would have liked. 31st overall pick. Again, would have been a solid, but his career wasn't quite long enough. They got unlucky. No grade there. Terrell Thomas, the defensive back in round 2. He was a pretty good player for them. He gets a solid grade there. In the 3rd, Marion Manningham. Much like Steve Smith, had some years where he contributed. Didn't do so for a particularly long period of time. No impact on the grade there. The 2009 draft. Hakeem Nicks, first overall. First round, 29th overall, the wideout. Had a really good career in New York. Pretty much ended once he left, and never really suffered a few injuries, as seems to be the theme for New York Giants first rounders over the last decade. really shortened his career, but he was a very effective player for the Giants and a good first round pick, so that gets a solid. In the second, Clint Simtim, linebackers have been a disaster zone for this team for as long as I can remember. They've not really put too much effort into finding them. When they have, it's not worked out. He didn't achieve anything. He was a bust. Also in the second, Will Beatty, the offensive lineman. He's been pretty good for them. He's filled a lot of different spots. Not a great player by any means, but good value in the second round. Solid pick. Has helped them on the offensive line multiple occasions at multiple spots. So pretty good. In the third, Ramses Barden, wide receiver. He was a bust. He did nothing. In the third, Travis Beckham, who I believe was a tight end. He also did nothing and was a bust. Moving on to the 2010 draft. Keeping up the injury theme, although this one's a very unique injury. Jason Pierre-Paul, the man of less digits than most. He's been a very good player for them. He was selected 15th overall, the defensive end. Had a couple of really great years, one last year being among them. Got his long-term deal now. I think he's been a very good pick for them. Pretty good player. Improved as time's gone on. Was at one point an absolute liability against the run. Now is actually a strength of his game. So that's a really good pick there. In the second, Linval Joseph, now playing for the Vikings. He's turned into a really good player. That's another solid pick there. And in the third, Chaz Jones, a defensive back. Yeah, he's done nothing. Goes down as a bust. In the 2011 draft, once again, injuries. Prince Amukamara had a pretty good time when he was healthy in New York. They let him go because he couldn't. Turned into a solid player when he's healthy. 19th overall pick for a corner. I think when he's healthy, he lives up to that status. I'm going to go with a solid. No, that's not really going to be based on his time in New York. I think he's a good player. In the second, Marvin Austin. I remember this guy. Everyone thought he was one of the best players coming out. Well, he fell to the second. The Giants thought they got a steal. They didn't. They got an absolute bust. In the third, Gerald Jernigan, the wide receiver. He did nothing. He's a bust. 2012, incredibly unlucky here. David Wilson, the running back, at 32. Career cut short by injury. Looked pretty good when he did play, which was not for long at all. Can't give this one a grade. I think injury is in the a football-related injury. I can't really say it's a bust as a result. So that's just no score there. Ruben Randall, much like Manningham and Steve, had a couple of all right years there. I think he was more talented than he produced. Inconsistent, but was a contributor for a couple of years. I'm not going to grade that one as good or bad, reasonable. And in the third, Jerron Hosley, a defence back, he's not done anything. He is a bust. Moving on to the 2013 draft, Justin Pugh, very important pick for this team. He's been vital to holding that line together with the 19th pick. He's played a bit of guard, a bit of tackle. He's a solid NFL player, so he was a very good pick. In the second, Jonathan Hankins, the gigantic nose tackle. Love this guy. A lot of fun to watch. Was great with Snacks Harrison this year. Those two doing like the old Williams Wall impression. Just very hard to run on him. Good player. Solid pick there. In the third, Demontre Moore, the defensive end. Again, one of them highly touted prospects who didn't do anything. He is a bust. Now moving on to the last three drafts. Being a little bit more conservative with some of these grades. Sitting on the fence a bit more than I'd like. Simply, some of these players have not played enough for us to make any decision as to whether they're a bust or a success. Players I feel strongly about, however, I will grade. So bear that in mind. So 2014, Odell Beckham Jr. with a 12th overall pick. I mean, this is an easy home run. He's one of the top receivers in football already. Great player. Seems a bit, likes the limelight a bit much more than I'd probably like from one of my players. But I don't follow the Giants, so I can just enjoy the silliness of his antics, I suppose. In the second round, Weston Richburg, offensive lineman. Jury's still out on that one. In the third, Jay Bromley, defensive tackle. I don't think he's still with the team, so he goes down as a bust. 2015 draft, Eric Flowers, the offensive tackle at number 9. I thought he really struggled last year. Played a bit better as a rookie. Jury's still out there. It's got to perform better though, otherwise this will go down as a bust. Landon Collins in round 2, he fell. Question about athleticism. Struggled in his rookie year. Last year was an absolute monster. He was great, making the All-Pro team. So that goes down as a solid pick. I can't see that falling off. Yeah, great pick. And in the third, Odegizua? I don't know, that's a tough one to pronounce. He's not done anything at this point, but I'm not going to give them a grade there. And then last year, Eli Apple, I thought he played pretty well for a rookie. Not quite enough for me to say it's solid yet. Corners are tough. You see some corners just fall off a cliff early in their career. And the second, Sterling Shepard, can safely say I think that was a solid pick. He looks like a very good player. Playing in the slot as well with Marshall and Beckham. I don't know how many targets he'll get, but he'll definitely have opportunities there. Will not face the most difficult corners that teams have. And in the third, Darian Thompson, a safety, and ungraded there. So not a lot of great picks really from this team. A fair few busts, 9 busts, 10 solid, 1 home run, only 1 value, which is the lowest total that I've come across. That's really poor. So whether it's not giving a chance to these players that they draft in later rounds, or simply just whiffing constantly, that's not good enough. As a result, their total score ends up a mere +3, which is in the lower bracket of the league. I've had some terrible luck with first rounders. I mean, 4 solid and an absolute home run. 2 that, the last 2 I'm undecided on. And then 3 that have just had their careers shredded by injury. Even a couple of the solids have been affected by injuries. That's been a real pain, and that could have really boosted their grade to get them into the sort of middle tier. But, I mean, that's a real lack of starters. I mean, 12 players, a lot of them no longer with the team. Clearly, you can see why they had to rely on free agency last year. Didn't expect the score to be this bad. This team doesn't have a reputation for being poor drafters, yet when you really break it down, I think they have been. And it probably is why they've been such a middling team over the course of Eli's career. So what do you guys think? Do you think I've been overly harsh? The injuries make this one the tougher ones to do for sure. It's very difficult to grade, players that are solid and then, they only play 3-4 years. It's unfortunate. Giants have definitely been the hardest bitten team by this fact. Would you grade them any differently? That's what I want to know. What do you think of the Giants' overall prospects? Always interesting. Joe Reese sure loves drafting pass rushers. We know that much. So as always, any comments? Facebook below, Twitter, the Cover Zero, Facebook page, any of those. I'll do my best to get back to absolutely everybody. It's been a pleasure as always. If you enjoyed this one, check out some of the others. Definitely check out Friday. As I say, you'll see a lot more done with these stats. It will all make a lot more sense in context and be a lot more interesting, I hope, for all of you. It's been an absolute pleasure. And as always, go Bucks.